Howdy. Welcome to another Saturday live stream, the TeleDynes YouTube channel. Just getting settled in here. Make sure everything's working. Ah, here's the guitar. It's pretty good. All right. Well, had a fun gig last night. I hope everybody is having a good weekend. And mine's turning out pretty good so far. Had a great show. Had some new tunes that we threw out there, and it was kind of learned them last minute, and it was fun. I'd never played Brown Eyed Handsome Man before. We did kind of a mix between like the Buddy Holly Chuck Berry version. It was fun. We Bebopalula. I played that many times before, of course, but I've been working on. That's the next video that's coming up, which is part of the channel update. So I'm going to talk about that. I just kind of officially learned the solo. I never learned the actual solos to Bebopalula, not note for note anyway. But for the video, of course, I started learning it, and it's such a cool solo, so iconic, right? So had to learn that. What else did we do? Those were the ones that really stuck out to me. At the end of the night, we did a song called Twitchy. It's kind of an obscure tune. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that one, but that is a I'm trying to look up the actual artist that did it. But anyway, it's an interesting little history behind that tune. Can't play it on here. Renee Hall Orchestra is the version that you would click on if you had Spotify. But anyway, it's played. It kind of has this weird sound to it. It's like this. It's a bend. So what it is it's not a guitar. It's a unitar. And originally it was made out of a fence post with fence wiring, like chain link fence wire, and then they hit it with a leather belt, and that created the sound. And then you'd use a slide on it to kind of get the sound. So it's almost like a washboard, like not a washboard, but like a bucket, where you step on the string, like the quarrymen kind of thing. But the bass player for the TeleDynes, Spike, he made one out of a piece of wood. Took a G string from like an electric bass, a flat wound, put some metal piping on there to kind of brace it up a bit, put like a Dean Markley pickup that just has a wire to it, and got a bamboo stick from a tiki torch that we cut in half, and then just kind of use like a guitar slide, like one of these, just like a thicker one, and hit it and put some distortion on an amp. It sounded pretty cool. Yeah, that was last night. That was a lot of fun. Oh, we did Maybelline too. We hadn't done that. That was actually one of the first tunes that we played with the TeleDynes, with the very first show that we ever did. Way back in 2015. That's always a fun little right. And I just kind of come up with my own little solos for that, where like get that car horn sound. And then I've just been working on the original tunes and some instrumentals for the band, and just to play some covered stuff. And I'll probably be producing, some videos, and some of my early videos on this channel are just me playing some songs. So I'm going to be doing some of that as well. And the channel is, I said last week, the channel is completely, fully monetized. We're on the next level, so onward and upward from here. So today I was going to talk about that, and that's kind of where we are with the channel updates. Just to wrap that up, we got a new video, the Bebopalula video, and then a riff video, and then we'll see what happens from there. I'm still working on the history, of gear. That's just kind of exploding and expanding and getting longer and longer. I just want to make sure that I get all my ducks in a row and the facts straight so I don't miss anything or say the wrong thing. So I was gonna talk about chord melody with mixing chord melody triads and also lead lines. Like where do you decide between, do you play a chord for the melody? Do you play individual notes? Sometimes you can go in between and just play two notes, right? So I did this little like an instrumental version of the song "Will You Love Me Tomorrow." Everybody knows that, right? And there I'm using just the triads. So I kind of go back and forth. And when you play the chords, when I play chord melody, I always think of like that's the string section or the saxophone section of a big band. And the double stops and triads and individual notes can be, I think of more as like punchy, more like the trumpets, and or the or some kind of individual, just a melody line, like a vocal line. And obviously there's certain physical limitations that you're going to run into. If it's really fast, it's going to be tough if you want a full sound. So you have to pick and choose, like where do you go from there? And if you're playing an instrumental, you're playing the same melody over and over again. You're playing the verse several times. So what I like to do is play one time, do it maybe just the individual notes, and then maybe build it and do a triad, and then do a chord melody, depending on the dynamic of the tune. And don't ever forget octaves as well. So you're playing the melody down here, and you want to play it again, play the same thing, but do it an octave higher. It makes it sound like a completely different section. So when you're composing, it occurred to me a while ago, like, there are 12 notes. I'm like, well, actually, there's more than that. There's really 88 keys on a piano. And you use the octaves as if they're another note, even though it's the same note, but it's not really. It's an octave higher. So it can function as its own separate melody, at least perception-wise. So when I would do this song, like, and I just play partial chords. Yeah. And then I would go into a chord melody version of it. Kind of just let it ring out a little bit. And it builds it up a little bit, right? Then you go into the verse, the bridge there. And for that part, I would, that's the strings playing a little, riff there. So I would just play, and that's what I mean by it's too fast. You can't really, play all those chords as full chords. So I would just play individual notes like that. And then it goes through the bridge, and then it comes up to the next part. So then instead of just going back to, I go up an octave higher. Right? And that allows you to kind of change up the way the song is going and how it's perceived, at least anyway. And then it goes into this really fast string little section. So I just play that as an individual, like, And play it like that. And it's just bouncing back and forth between those different. So you just have all the options open to you. Because I know when I start learning a song or trying to break it down either into an instrumental or into a solo, even just you're singing a song and you're just going to break that into a chord melody solo. It's easy to go, oh, let me just do a pentatonic blues thing over it and just make up stuff. Or I could do a melody, play the individual notes. But you also have your triads and you have your chord melody. And you have so many different options that you can do to create an interesting solo that's not just one specific thing. Another one we do is the Be My Baby by the Ronettes. We know. I'm just using two notes there. And then when I do the solo, I just go into a like a chord melody version. And that kind of, fills it up for the solo, especially when you're the whole thing is an instrumental, like I said. So you don't have the singer and then the instrument and then the solo part. If I were playing that with a singer, then I'd probably just do that chord melody and then just play the chords underneath it. And I'm trying to think of another example of different chord melodies that I've used. But as far as coming up with chord melodies, how they work, it's essentially just built on the melody note. I mean, obviously that's the main part. So whatever you got to figure that out, whatever that is, and then you just, if you know what the chord is, you just voice down the chord. So if the first note is let's say it's an E, right? Or in the case of like Be My Baby, right? It's E, E flat, C sharp, back up, F sharp. So the first note, the first chord is an E to an E major 7. So there's, and it's all really over just an E chord. But the melody is playing those notes. Well, we know E is the root of E, but the E flat and the C sharp are the major 7th and the 6th. So you play major 7, 6. And the chord changes to an A, but it's an F sharp. So that would be the 6th of A. That's the F sharp. So the E is still over the A, so you could just release that E there, right? And then that's the B7. The E flat is the B7 because that's the third of your 5, so to speak, right? So it's really just a matter of making sure you put that, knowing what the chord is, find out your melody note, what the chord is, and then just voice down from there, essentially. And a lot of the times the melody, if the melody is not in the chord, that's just considered a neighboring note. And a lot of the times you'll see like there's an extension, a major 7, a 6, a flat 7, a 9, or whatever it is, and it becomes this sort of thing. And you start realizing, oh, I'm playing these extended chords as a melody with these extensions on there. It's almost like substituting the chords, sort of. So that is, then you can use those chords in your soloing as well, too. You can just kind of hop around and mess with that. But that's what's called four-way close, by the way. That is how you, if you're voicing for a big band or an orchestra or whatever, the easiest way that works is called four-way close, which means it's just the next note, the closest note to your melody note in voicing in four-part harmony, four-way close. Of course, you can also voice in different ways. You can voice in fourths. That's voiced in thirds typically, and then you can voice in fourths. Just count up a fourth. Voice in fourth with like a 6/9 chord. That's a fourth, right? Those are all fourths. And you can voice the whole song, and then you've heard songs like that before, but when you hear it, once you know what it is, like, oh, those are fourths. And fifths, of course, perfect fifths. Right? And when you have the thirds, you just add the third in, right? As third, keep going up from there. As you start to voice up, and with chord melody, you want to put the melody note on the top. So a lot of when you hear harmonies, like vocal harmonies, sometimes the harmonies will be on the top and the melody will be on the bottom. And you can do that too. It's just typically when you're playing a chord melody, the melody note, the highest note, is the one that's going to be perceived as the melody. So you have to be kind of careful, like I just did here. It's, even though the melody note is the flat, the F sharp still ringing on the top there. The fifth there is still ringing on the top, but it can work even with songs like Sleepwalk, for example. Like, the next note is 1/5, right? E to G, C to G. But at least the Setzer version, he's playing S minor 7, and the A is ringing out on the top. So it can still work in some instances. So you just have to, that's where you use your ear and decide, like, does it work, does it not work, and make a decision from there. Again, at the end of the day, use your ear and decide what's best for you and your situation. Let's see, what else can we talk about here? I mean, chord melody, I could go on for hours. It's just a fascinating thing for me to talk about harmonies and orchestration and where to, how to voice a big band or a symphony or whatever. But let's play a couple of licks here. Last week we did, I don't know if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, riffs based around like a rockabilly progression. And I am making a video. It's coming out hopefully this week if I can get it done. Because the Bebopalula video is kind of taken precedent. That's a lot of fun for me to do all that, all the history of stuff and make all the little effects in the beginning, and plus having, learning the solos and stuff like that. It's fun. Hey, Richard. Yeah, doing pretty good. Hope you're doing good too. And so I did some, rockabilly licks. Like, the video is going to be based on riffs for like shuffles and swings and that sort of thing. So just soloing ideas, things you can come up with and use. The idea of the video is just having some kind of pre-programmed muscle memory riffs that you have in your back pocket if you're ever in an improvisational situation where you can just say, I know a few riffs that'll get me through. Or if you're in between solos and the band leader is going, go around again, you go, okay. And so you can just pull these riffs out and you have them in muscle memory. And you can just And even though it's repetitive, it works. I mean, you just say that kind of in your face guitar does the audience does respond to that more than playing a lot of intricate type of things. It is true. Um, so having just a few little riffs in your memory can help. And so I'm just making a video on different things that I've put in my bank, just to have in those instances. Or if you're, you play gig, a lot of the average gigs 3-4 hours long, you get tired, and you're mentally, you just go, what am I going to do now? Especially if you're not playing a song that has a rehearsed solo to it or something, and you just want, I want to make the song go around longer, or the audience is dancing. It happened last night. We were playing, I forget what song it was. Yeah, it was we do a cover of the Mavericks. I Don't Care If You Love Me Anymore. And it typically just goes around once on a solo, but people were dancing. And sometimes, when you're singing and you're playing, I'm not really thinking about it, I'm just thinking about the song. And so the bass player, he's always watching for that, and if they are dancing and I'm not paying attention, he'll just say, "All right, let's go again," and I'll hear that, and then I go again, and I just go around again on a solo. So I just kind of threw in some basic, like pedal steel type bends, because it's kind of occasion, not really country, but not the straight kind of train thing. So I just threw in some like, just something like that to just to fill in some space. So I'll go over a couple of riffs here instead of for the swing stuff, which is the bulk of what you're going to run into, probably what you're going to run into in rockabilly or blues and stuff. It's going to be medium tempo shuffles to fast swings and things like that. But the other side of it is also the country 2-beat stuff. And there's a couple of little riffs here that I like to throw out, and you can do these in any key. But I'm going to play most of this in E, between E and A. I've done this one before where you can go, so if your tempo is, this is annoying. Buttons. So you can do that on the 1, and that goes back to the 1, or you go up to the 4. Right? You can also do this version too. You're over in E. Something like that. And like I said, this version, like, you can do it up here in an octave. This is where you can do it in any key. Like, that's playing some open strings, but you can do the same thing. You can do that anywhere. And the other thing too is, depending on the key that you're in, if you're in E, right, you can do that over the 1. You can also do that over the minor, the relative minor, right? E's here. It works really well, especially if it's the 4 of the song. So if you're in E, you go to A, instead of just moving, do this lick around to E and A, you play over the F sharp, which is the 6th, right? The relative minor, and around whatever you want to do there. You can be in B. You're going from this 5. And you're picking with your fingers and stuff. I love the sound of that kind of chicken picking sort of, the finger picking sound. Um. Anyway, then here's another one. This is again can be moved around. This is also over that minor. Right now I'm in E, so be here, but you could do it here too if you're an A or E. It doesn't matter what key you're in. Something like this, right? That's always a fun lick. You can do it anywhere. See? Whatever you want to, wherever you want to play that. And another one here. A. You could play it down here, but it sounds really cool. It sounds more like pedal steel type octave if you're playing the stuff up here. Something like that. Just mess around with those little things, right? And of course you can do that bebop scale that we hear, right? But just, and you're playing country stuff here. Same thing, just playing it faster. That's kind of playing the major scale there. I'm just hitting the timing, I always kind of figure out when I'm trying to do a riff like that, where do I want to end up, and then work backwards from there. So if I want the timing, I want this specific ending phrase to come out, then I'll kind of time it and walk my way back timing wise to figure out where I need to start. And that's where you can decide on, do you start on the root note of the chord? You can start anywhere. It's within the mode that you're playing. So if you're in A, you can play I could start on a B. Doesn't really matter. Typically, that would be like that would be over something like the 5 and where you're going to land. And it's always good to land on notes within the chord that you're going to, as opposed where you're starting doesn't really matter as much. I mean, it's nice to have like the starting note is one of the notes of the chord, and then the ending note is one of the notes of the chord if the chord is changing by the time you get to the end of your riff or whatever. But you can always keep it going and play your different different musical phrases and stuff as the chords are changing. A lot of this will depend on the complexity of the tune, where the chords are going, how many chords there are. And if you're playing off of the substitutions, if you want to get crazy and start adding your own types of things, so you could add a tritone to that and play off of that and get really stupid complicated with it. But it's but you can have a lot of fun with it, and it's always good to just like play to backing tracks, play to chord, not just drums, but have like a guitar playing. If you don't have, like, I have a few backing tracks on the website that you can download. I think one of them might be messed up. I gotta fix that. But I don't know if I added the I'll add a 2-beat one that you can download and practice to, and just come up, go round and round and round and come up with different ideas and figure out a tritone, see if it works, and then you kind of have a close to a real world example if it's going to work. And I, if you have a local blues jam in your area, I definitely recommend going out to do something like that. It's a lot of fun, and you can get to meet other musicians and other people that are, if you're trying to start a band, or if you are in a band, or if you need other sub players to play with, if or just in general, just have a good time and talk about music. And I try to get out to those when I can. There's a few around the area. I'm sure somebody's got something, or start your own. So yeah, if you're doing the let's see what else we got here for the fives. Um, I mean, you can. It's pretty much those same types of things. You can. That's really the real country sound, right? Bending to the third. And sometimes this works for me. I don't know. I don't know if it's coming through there, but you can get the volume swell. Right? And that sounds more like a, like a lap steel or something. Or you can get one of those volume pedals. I have one of those Ernie Ball volume pedals that you can just use and play some riffs like this because I mean it's easier to do with a Gretsch because the volume knob is right here. But if you had or a Tele, you can kind of do it. Danny Gatton used to do that all the time. Yeah, I think he switched the tone knobs and the volume knob so he would get that kind of almost wah effect. But the awkward thing for me though is that because it's here, your pick is limited to being playing up here. It's very treble sounding. Where with the Gretsch, you can, get more of that mellow. Of course, if you want that, then it's harder to do, I guess, on the Gretsch. But, whoops. But then you can, have a, whatever. We're doing a thumb pick thing. It's almost easier to do with the thumb pick because you don't have to worry about holding the pick and then stretching your hand. Yeah. So those are few little tricks. Few little tricks you can use. Yeah, I don't really do too many volume swells, but let's just say do that, of course. All right, so yep. When everybody drops picks. I usually always have a couple on my amplifier just in case if I drop it. I haven't dropped one in a while, but it does happen, especially if it happened to me last night, which doesn't. I was playing and I like, what's going on? I'm missing notes or something's just not. It wasn't right. Something just felt off, and I looked at the pick, and it was just completely almost flat, rounded off, and I'm like, oh well, that's why. So I just got a new pick with a, more pointed edge to it, and I was like, oh, that's what's wrong. So you want to be aware of that. Just keep your picks. I usually use them. They last about 2-3 gigs maybe, and then that's about it. And so I recommend if you play a lot, like I do, I would just get them in bulk. You just make it way cheaper than going to the store and getting them like a 10-pack or whatever. Any updates on the? Yeah, I've just been crazy busy with work and then the trying to get the channel to the next level. There's just been some background stuff that I've had to do, and finally got that squared away. So, and then I've been just working on trying to get the next videos. I don't want to let too much time go by before I come out with a new video, just to keep the channel relevant and in the algorithm, so to speak. It's warm up here today. But yeah, I got the new song. I just have to finish. I finished all the parts, like everything's recorded. So it's really just a matter of mixing. I think I have one little tiny um, vocal part to record for one of the new songs, and then that's done. And then I just have to mix it and hopefully have that in there. Cheers. This is just a seltzer. But yeah, so that'll be coming out soon. Hopefully within the next week, I'll have some time to get to that. I've learned my lesson with coming up with these videos. I always think, oh, I'm going to make another video. I'll do this really easy riff video and just make a, and it'll be done really quickly. And I don't do any prep and I don't do any script writing. And then all of a sudden I find myself just going, what am I going to say? And what am I going to do? And I record it and I get it done. And then I realize I have all of this footage that I have to sit and kind of cut through. And it's overwhelming. And I say, the best thing to do is to just do as much prep as you possibly can before you sit in front of the camera, because you can sit here with the AC. I can sit with the AC on and the um, fan on or whatever, and have a drink and write the script and get all the prep done, and before I turn the cameras on. So if I do that, I'm sitting there under because I have a. It doesn't look like it, but there's a lot of lights that put out a lot of heat when I'm doing the recording, because in order to get the camera to look, it's an older camera that I'm recording with, so in order to get it to look decent and not really grainy and distorted, I have to put what's called the image, the ISO, on a lower setting so it doesn't look grainy. When you do that, you need a lot of light. So I so yeah, it gets really hot and it gets really tiring if you're sitting there. And the other problem with the camera I'm recording on is that it has a timer, which is very annoying, because you'll record you'll get about it's never the same. It'll be 8 minutes to 14 minutes, and somewhere in that time it'll just shut off, and I have to go get up and restart the camera. So, and that's probably just the age of it, that you know, I mean, most scenes are never going to be any longer than that anyway, so it's fine. It's just that I know that if I'm in the middle of something and I'm trying to record script or talking, if I miss it, it's happened several times where I'll be playing and I'll look up, movie stopped recording. I could stop, go back a little bit and pick up where I left off. Eventually I'll get that camera replaced, but for now it works. Oh, thank you, thank you. They, yeah, I try to get them to look as good as I possibly can. I'm always trying to learn more about video editing and clean up and color correction and you know color grading and all of that stuff that goes into creating the videos. I'm limited to what I can do. It's a small, very small room, as you can tell, and the camera is about as far back against the wall as it can go before I start losing. Just it's just right within the frame, and it's not a full frame camera or anything, so it's half frame DSLR. Old T3 Rebel T3i Canon. Yes, don't forget to like and subscribe. I thank you guys again for watching and helping the channel. All the comments, all the likes, the subscribes, of course, really help the channel and the algorithm. It's got us to this point, and we'll just keep going from here. I had said last time I am going to start, I think this week, as long as the other person's schedule works out. for the podcast, which is going to be just an interview type show where I talk to other local musicians that play roots music, not just rockabilly, mostly, but they might play blues or uh, bluegrass or country or even some rock stuff, and just players that I've played with, that I'm friends with, as well as other musicians from other parts of the country that we'll probably do over Zoom or something. Um, and that'll just be an in addition to everything else that I'm doing, because that'll be an easy thing. I don't have to worry about background audio or really editing. Just the tips and tails, as they call it. The top of the video have the little intro, and then the ending part, and then everything else is just dialogue. So that's super easy. It doesn't really matter. You can take a video that's 30 seconds long and it could take you hours and hours and hours to edit, but you can take a podcast that's 3 hours long and it only takes you a few minutes to, an hour or so, if that, to put it all together. Because you're just going through and making the cuts really quick, mastering the audio, boom, kick it out, done. Um, let's see. All right. So as far as some other things, I've been messing around with a little bit of don't know if I'll get copyright claimed for these songs, but played a little bit of those earlier, but we'll see. Been playing this little wouldn't want to. I don't know if it's really technically not really gypsy jazz, but gypsy jazz style-ish kind of thing. A lot of this stuff's in the minor key. This one is in F minor. Everybody knows the tune, I'm sure. Putting on the Ritz. And what I want to talk about on that one is that that's the melody, right? So there's not really much to that. Right. And that's the whole song, basically. Other than that little interlude bridge verse, that verse thing or whatever, which I don't play. But soloing over that. So that's where you want to think of it's in terms of modes, right? So F minor, a relative major to that is A flat. And you would figure that out. If you want to figure that out, obviously you just have to count up 3 in the major scale, or the minor scale rather. And then hey, that's A flat, and if you're an A flat, you count up to the 6th, and there's your relative, minor. So as you're playing these things, you can come up with you can play the minor all the time. But you can also go and play over, even though you're on an F minor, play over A flat major. But you don't start on an A flat, you start on the F. But you see the pattern. Everybody plays guitar, at least for me anyway. I've learned from the grids all the time for so long. I've learned from, you see the fretboard grid or you see the tablature or whatever for a scale. Right. And so you see that pattern in your fingerboard all the time. And what you would do is that you can still play an F minor, but think of it in that A flat major pattern. But just start on the 6th. And it still sounds minorish, more or less. And you can, but you're just playing over, the major there. And that song just goes to a C, like a C7. And in the key of F minor or A flat. There's no E major, but because it's a C7. A lot of the times you'll see that with the minor songs. The 5 is still the dominant chord. It's not a C minor 7th. It's still a C7. So the song, it kind of changes that. You know, you'll get that sharp 5 to 5, and that's still the same as if you were in the key of F major. You would play that, but if you're in F minor, you still play the same thing. So that changes the scales and the melody a little bit. So you have to think about it in terms of, okay, well, you don't have to. You can still play that E flat there, but you want to make sure that you can also, when the C is coming up, you can add that E in there. You can add the E major because you're in C7. It's there, right? And you got that B flat, it's a major 7. And so you're playing basically over a a C7, or like what they call Mixolydian scale over a C. I don't really think of it in terms of like those in that way, but I mean, yeah, I guess that's what you're doing. You're just playing that mode, the Mixolydian mode. But essentially, a Mixolydian mode is basically just an F major scale over a C. It's the same notes. So the only difference between a C Mixolydian is that flat 7. So if that flat 7 would be a B flat, if you're playing an F major scale, B flat, same thing. It's just the starting note changed. So that's where you call it. That's where you get into modes. And since we're in F anyway, just think of it like that. And you think of the chords and how they're changing and the notes that are coming up, and that's where music theory can kind of help you out, and you know how to change the chords, change the melody and the modes and the scales that you're playing when the chords are changing, as well as, and then when you're interconnecting chords together, you could use a diminished or augmented chord if you're going up or down in the progression to connect chords together. And modes can be very helpful when you're playing, like I was showing the licks earlier, whatever you're doing, whatever those riffs you're doing, in between those riffs. And I do mention that in the video too. So instead of just sounding like a loop pedal, where you're just playing, pressing play, you're like press play, and you just go, and then you go, and you're just playing riffs all the time. You want to, you play a little bit of riff, but like, you don't just stop and just play that over. You can, and the D is still going, right? Or before, whatever. You can just walk up a D major scale. And that's where the modes come in. You're thinking of, you play your riff, but now you go into a scale. Riff, scale, diminished scale, connecting the chords together. Thinking about it in terms of rhythm is very important, as opposed to just playing a bunch of 8th notes or 16th notes or triplets all the time, because then it just sounds like a whole bunch of notes and there's no melody to it. And a great solo doesn't have to be a whole bunch of notes. It can just be a few notes. Like say one note can say as much as 1,000 if you're hitting the right notes at the right time. George Harrison, I think, was a master of that, especially in the later years of the Beatles, as well as his own solo career, like all the Dark Horse stuff. And the Traveling Wilbury stuff. A lot of that stuff was great. Especially, I love the slide solos. Very simple, but very effective. And even the Bebopalula stuff is relatively simple, but very effective. The second solo is a little more sparse. love that little, almost like flying saucer rock and roll. Something like that. Really gives it that 50s sound. Yeah. I mean, that's... Oh, yeah. I mean, the Bigsby is just a great tool to have on a guitar. That's why even on my Tele I've got one, because it just can't really quite get the same effect with a Floyd Rose or a whatever, the Fender vibrato stuff. And they make the kind of like knockoff Bigsbys, and they're okay, but they're a little stiff. Actual Bigsbys, about something about the way they make their springs, it's just so much better. Oh, thank you. Like the tone? Yeah. I mean, it's just this is the computer, so it's the plugin that I have, but it's based on the basement amplifier, so it's the closest I have found, and it actually sounds pretty good. I did A/B them once, just to see like what does it sound like, and compared to my amp, and what I've noticed is that a lot of these plugins that you get for guitar, they're great, but what they are is they sound like the amp recorded and mastered, EQ'd, mastered, compressed, everything. So it's like the finished product. So there's no work to really do. So you could probably record an entire album and just use that and pass it off. It'd be fine. I love this tone. I mean, just the Gretsch guitar with the delay and that the great sound. Fun. My favorite part here is when you go. That part's fine. But this part right here. That, just simple. It's just a great little tone. Great little riff there. It's kind of like these rock riffs. Here's another one that I don't even know where I picked this up. I think I just watched somebody do it, and I just like, oh, that it's usually used more over straight stuff, like. That. Very simple, but very effective. A lot of the stuff that's really effective is very simple. It's just, yeah, I mean, well, no, it's not all the gear. It is the practice, your fingers, and everything else. Because if you have a good, if you have good, can play well, you can pretty much make any guitar and amp work. Although I've been in situations where, if the gear isn't up to snuff, it can damper a few things. But generally speaking, unless something's really a wreck, then you're probably you'll probably be fine. For me, it's the thing that will throw me off the most is the amp's not so much a big deal, but the guitar has got to be there. It doesn't have to be a Gretsch necessarily, but it's got to be set up well. I see some people's guitars and they're just, see that action's fairly low. This is about um, 2 millimeters, 2 30 seconds away from the fret on the 12th fret. Well, everywhere, but the 12th fret's where you measure it. And some people's, I see this neck is like like this, um, and completely bowed, and the string action's like way up here. And I'm like, how in the world do you play this thing? But I mean, unless they're playing slide or something, and I figure, oh well, they must have it set up for slide, and it's like, no, they don't. It's just that's just the way it is. And oof. Oh yeah, yeah. The Fender amp and the Gretsch are yeah, that's great. I've never played through one of the old Gretsch amps. I've always wanted to, but that's I've never seen one. I did see an old Gibson amp once, but I never played through it. It was that's cool. They're rare. But yeah, the Fender amps are good. There is the main difference for me with amps is closed back versus open back. Most amplifiers are open back. But the bass amplifiers in general are closed back. And that you need that because you want to push the bass notes or bigger waveforms, obviously. So it takes longer for the bass note to form. So it's always good to be, that's why when you record bass, preferably, if you can, if you're going to record the amplifier, you're better off to have a microphone, at least one of them, farther away. They say like 30 feet. Ideally, to record a bass amplifier is to have a narrow hallway and put the microphone 30 feet away from the bass amp, and your bass notes will fully form. But it also sounds really good when you put a microphone right up to the bass amp too. So, um, but anyway, having that closed back is great, and having a hollow body guitar when you have a closed back really compresses things, and because the sound is very round, for lack of a better term, and open sounding in general, having that compressed closed back really helps tighten up the sound a bit. When you play these things through, when I've played through deluxes or Princetons or whatever, the sound does tend to kind of go out and up a little bit more. It's not as precise, and if you're attenuating it and you're playing quiet, it doesn't really matter. But if you're playing loud, which I've started to do recently, I was using these attenuators, and since I got that Space Echo, or the Chorus Echo rather, I haven't used the attenuator. And even though it's loud, it's not irritating. It's not so loud that it's it's not so loud that it's killing you, you know. Um so I've that's my main thing with the different amps. So it just depends, because I have a Hot Rod Deluxe. Yeah, Hot Rod. I think that's what it's called, the Hot Rod Deluxe Fender amp. And that thing is so loud and so open, and that's the other thing with the open back. They feed back just a little bit more if you crank them with the hollow bodies. Great for tellies and anything else, but again, the Fender amp in general with a Gretsch. I've had the Vox AC30. It's okay. Crate amplifiers are okay. Fenders, yeah. I won't even bother looking at anything else, pretty much. I haven't tried the orange ones, to be fair. I haven't looked at it. I did use a Mesa Boogie California Tweed. That's pretty good. That's pretty decent. Again, the problem with that amplifier that I had was that being electronic, or circuit boards, not point to point. Um, yeah, it's so loud. Yeah. Mm, funny. Yeah. No, actually, with that the chorus echo kind of attenuates the sound a little bit, so it's not as bad as just playing through a regular pedal, which I found to be interesting. because that was always my concern. I have to play through these attenuators, but with that thing, you really don't. So it works. It's more controlled, if that makes sense. The input signal's more controlled. And I can adjust that too. Which is nice because I don't have to worry about just the volume knob on the guitar. I can, there's, there's the output level, which I think is on the lowest setting, right? I don't know. It's because one's one way and one's the other. Anyway, the output level is on the lowest setting, so cut down to the lowest output level. But the input's on the highest, and that's what you want. You want your input level to be hot and your output to be um, lower, because the more you're pushing up against the tubes, the more distorted and breakup you're going to get, and you're going to get a little more saturation. You can flip it around and do it the other way, but and it's cleaner. And for certain sounds, I guess if you want more of a chimey, you know, completely clean sound, you could do that. Um, but it also has an adjustable volume knob, input volume knob as well. So that's great. Is there an output level? No, there's no output knob on that thing. So the output knob is your volume knob of your amplifier. So, and yeah, I wouldn't change a thing except want to get one of those the the smoke, the Setzer smoke guitars. I think I'm definitely leaning towards one of those next. Just to have one. Probably just to replace the orange one here. It it's definitely getting old. It's already had one refret. It needs another one, and I'm just putting it off. And it it was a couple streams ago. It was crackling, and it's crackled live, and it's got a whole bunch of electronic work. It's got to go through it, and I don't feel like doing it, so I'll take I'll take it to someone and have it done. But it'd just be easier to get the smoke one. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I've never. I did play one. I think once they had one at a Guitar Center or something, and of course they're great, and they're very similar to these as far as I understand it, as far as like feel of it, at least anyway. But it would be nice to have the even though I never use the mud switch. I have actually. I've used it a little bit occasionally if I play like a jazzier tune. It's nice to have just that mellow tone, and you can just flip it. That's I think what they designed it for, but um, typically don't use it too much. And plus, I don't know, stupid thing, but for me, I love this Cadillac tailpiece on the Bigsby, and unfortunately, this one doesn't have that. It's got the old, I don't know what that is, the 50s 56 style, I think. Um, and so I would love to have the orange 6120 with the Cadillac tailpiece. I don't know. I can ask maybe and ask the question. Most of them have the black dots on the top. The one I played it had red dots. Does it have red dots on the smoke, or is it the black dots? I don't know. Not that it matters. So I noticed that when Fender took over distribution for Gretsch, like there were little cosmetic changes that were made at first, and one of them was the red dots on the top. Um, I think it is the locking tuners too, I believe, right? Because this one has them. Red. Okay, that's what I thought. Cool. Um, yeah, this one has the locking tuners. I think these are. What are these? Go. Anyway, these are the ones up here, like the Spritzer locking tuners for the old one. This is a different brand, but it's fine. I love these locking tuners. This is a lifesaver. Huge time saver, especially if you break a string on a gig, you can just lock it and go. Where unfortunately for the Phoenix and the Falcons, they don't, because of those. They're nice looking, the little fancy tuning knobs, but they don't make, as far as I know, um, a locking a locking tuning peg for those. And typical string winders that you can use don't work. You have to use a bass string winder in order to fit that in there. And because it's still not quite, it's still a little too big, it slips out as you're as you're winding it. So it can be a little bit of a pain, but um, I try not to change those as often. I let that goes on, let that till the last minute till I have to change them, which I do need to change these strings this week. This one's been, can feel it. The bumps are starting, and still okay. Right there. Oh, there's a big one right there. Yeah, cool. And a build is amazing. Oh, yeah. Well, I hope so. I mean, they still make it, so that's great. Unfortunately, they stopped making this model, and but you can still get the smoke. So because the new hot rods have an rosewood fingerboard, and Gretsch does a really good job making the rosewood fingerboards. I gotta say, because there's a rosewood on my rancher, and that is totally fine. I don't have any problems with that, and I really like it. It doesn't You don't get the typical um, like pitting with a rosewood fingerboard. If you see it like Telly's and Strats and stuff, over time you start to see that. And I'm not really. I mean, maybe it's not old enough yet, but I don't really see it on the Gretches too much. So they still do a good job, even though it's rosewood, and they get the darkest possible wood, so it looks pretty close to ebony. Um, but I do like the ebony fingerboard. It's just a denser wood, and uh, so hopefully they'll go back eventually, make some hot rods with the ebony again. Um, but at least they do the signature one, and of course all the Falcons are made like that. Do new strings bother you if they are not worn in before a gig? No, not really. I mean, it's weird. It's awkward at first. Um you can tell they're the biggest thing is the sound. Of course, they're much brighter, and you forget. Even I forget every time I do it. I always say, "Wow, that's what new strings sound like." Every time, I just forget over time that how much much more sustain and brightness and everything that you'll get with a newer strings. I do like them broken in a little bit. I prefer that. So I'll usually I try to change the strings at least a day, if not 2 days before a gig, just to be sure, just to make sure they're broken in a tiny bit. And I try my best to um, sort of wear them in. I mean, there's only really one way to do it, and that's to play it. But you can you just kind of stretch it and stretch it this way up here, retune it, lift them up. See, but like just kind of lift them up like this, and then also is to take the whole thing off like that, let it slack, bring it back, stretch it again, and this is still in tune they're because they're won't broken in. But you can do that with every single one, every single string, and you just bring them off and bring them on, and then that kind of stretches them out, and you want to do that before you use any kind of lubricant or graphite or anything in the nut to keep the Bigsby in tune, because that will because you'll stretch the string, you'll put this you'll put whatever you want, if you put in tune or whatever in there, or even graphite, you'll put the string in there and then you'll tune it, and then all of a sudden the what you put in there is off over here. You're stretching the string, and all of a sudden all the lubricant or graphite is being pushed out, and so what's hitting the nut now is just the string itself, so it's still going to bind. So you want to make sure you stretch those strings pretty good before you, and the same thing here too, you do the same thing, you pull them off and do the same. And then once they're stretched, basically what I do is I keep doing that back and forth until it does exactly what it did, when I can still put it back, hit the note, and it's still in tune. So that way I know the string is stretched pretty much. It's not going to move too much after that. And then I can add in, then I pull each string individually off, put in the in tune lubricant or graphite, whatever I've got, and sand it down a little bit just to get rid of some of the burrs and things that happen from old strings, wearing the nut, wearing the saddle down. Put them back, and then tune them up, and that's they stay pretty good. And of course, temperature things are going to fluctuate; they go sharp, flat, or whatever. But and especially, and the neck's going to bow and things as that throughout the year. So it's getting more humid out now. So I haven't even looked at this. I gotta say, I've adjusted this neck maybe once, twice since I've bought it, and I bought this in 2018. Um, and where in comparison to, say, I've adjusted the neck on this Phoenix once since I got it, and I want to say the old, this one, the orange one, I probably have had to adjust the most, probably several times, but I haven't adjusted them in a long time. And the same thing with the jazz box back there. It's like the Gretches they're just built so well that I very rarely have to do that. Um, so when I used to work in the guitar shop, I would have to adjust. People would bring the same guitars in like a few months later, and the neck would be bowed again. And I'm like, or friends, other musicians, and they played the same Telly or the same Gibson especially, will just start to bow again, and acoustics and that sort of thing, very sensitive to the temperature changes. And I don't really humidify them or anything. They just kind of live in this room, hanging on the wall. I mean, they say, well, after about 7 years, the wood has kind of basically solidified. It's not going to move too much anymore, uh, which is part of the reason why guitars are so expensive, is because they have to get good quality wood to make these necks, because wood likes to bend back to where originally the way the tree was growing. And so then they have to let the wood cure, basically, and it cures, and then you got to have this big piece of wood and see how it bends this way, and then cut it, and then bend this way, cut it until eventually you get this good block of wood that you can use for a neck that's not going to move and is going to be pretty solid. And that's why these guitars are so pricey, because it takes that much time to buy that kind of wood. Is more expensive than buying just some newer piece of wood that's going to flip flop on you. So if your neck is constantly bowing and everything else, it's probably not the greatest. Probably not a cured, older piece of wood. But anyway, I always check them anyway, and it's still gonna bow a little bit as you play it through the years. Um, and then you can fix that with doing fret dresses, that sort of thing, which is just the order in which you do it. Of course, neck, bridge, nut. That's your setup. Get the neck straight. Get your height. 2 30 seconds. Make sure you're not buzzing. get the nut height down. I like to make sure the tension between the same tension that you have to use on your second fret should be the same that you use on your first fret. If you have to press harder down on your first fret, the action's too high, basically. Another thing you can do is just use a pick and see if it just slides in under the first fret pretty well. This action is actually just a little bit higher. It could actually come down probably a little bit. I left it up intentionally because I didn't know what the neck was going to do, and I wanted to make sure that it didn't bow too much. But I've had it long enough now, I could probably adjust this down. But I don't need it super low. It doesn't really bother me too much. But if you get buzzing and the neck's straight and all of that's done, it's probably a fret that's wonky, or you might get a twist in the neck, which is common. Then you just have to, there, you know, take it to a guitar shop if you're not, comfortable with it. But it's fairly easy to do. To just mark all the frets, take the string, get the strings to tension, so then your neck is set. Take the strings off, mark the strings with a Sharpie, then take like a diamond plate or some sort of flat, rigid surface with sandpaper on it, not too high a grit. They actually make a thing that you can get from like Stu Mac that you can just use it to, you know, scrape the fretboard, tape, put tape down on all the pickups. I use painter's tape to just put over the top of the pickups, because when you do this, it creates a lot of dust. And to get that dust off of there, once you do that, you just use like a shoe brush and get it all off of there. But after that, you remark them, crown them, and then polish them with sandpaper um, and steel wool. And I usually put tape. You have to put tape over each fret next to it, so as you're sanding down, you don't scrape and destroy your fingerboard. Um, especially like the pearl inlays and stuff, because it'll just scratch everything up if you're not careful. But all of that dust and steel wool and everything, these are magnets. It'll just stick right to the pickup. So you got to make sure you cover that. And I usually cover the F holes too, so the dust doesn't go down in there and all that, stuff. But it takes me about hour and a half to do something like that. But that's something that doesn't have to be done even if you play all the time. Maybe, I don't know, every 3 years, 3 or 4 years. It's usually it. You'll usually get one, maybe two fret dresses out of it. Then it needs a refret. And so a guitar on average, if you play all the time, it's probably maybe 20, 30 years. And then that's the integrity of the wood's going to be so thin at that point that you'll have to essentially just retire it and get a new guitar. It's impossible to, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's, just bring it out on special occasions. That's why you see where people, so and so's retired that guitar. They don't play it anymore because it's too worn down to play. Eric Clapton talked about that with one of his original guitars. It's just too worn down. The neck's too thin. They can't refret it anymore. Owned a Gibson 335 that bowed almost every June to normal position. Yep, that's pretty common. Um, that's pretty common. For whatever reason, the Gibsons always do that. Probably because, well, no, I don't even know. They use maple just like everybody else, so I don't know why. And they use ebony fingerboards typically. And some of the 335s have rosewood, but yeah, I don't know why. It might could be the wood, but mine did the same thing. I had a um, I had the studio Les Paul I had for a while. That one was a mess all the time. But the 335 was the BB King Lucille model, and um, you do the same thing, bow and Jew. Now I used to live in Florida and the uh the temperature didn't change all that much down there, so I never really had the problem. But when I moved up to the Northeast, um, the it's just fluctuates all the time. I'm in Rhode Island, so the right now humidity is insane. It gets worse than Florida, and so it's crazy. Especially the biggest problem is the winter time because that's when the guitar will start to dry out. So I used to use these uh this I don't have one now, but it's these little humidity tubes, and they have a little cap on the end. It's a little sponge inside there with the holes on the plastic, and you just kind of get it damp, twist it, and then you can put it in the guitar case. I usually use two of them or just one. You stick it, make sure it's completely damp, and so there's not dripping water, and then you can you stick it down into the F hole, and then put it in the case, and that will help humidify it. And you can do that with acoustics as well. But if you don't have one of those, the easiest way to do that to humidify um, the guitar is to just take a sponge and put it in a plastic Ziploc bag and just punch holes in the Ziploc bag, wring the sponge out and put it up by the where the headstock is. Or if you have an acoustic guitar, put it in the F hole. I mean, F hole. Put it in the sound hole, um, and that will. And then it's in a bag, right? So you can easily just grab it and pull it right out of there. Um, Take the strings either off or get rid of the tension on them. And if you really need to humidify an acoustic, because those are the ones that really need it, is you can feel the way to tell if it needs humidification besides the neck bowing is if the top body, the top part right here next to the saddle, the bridge, just feel it. And if you feel like a bump where the strings are pulling, the tension's pulling, and you're pulling the wood basically up. And if it's not humidified properly, it'll start to pull up, and eventually you'll get a crack down here if you don't take care of it. So the quickest way to humidify it, take the strings off or reduce the tension on them at least. And do the same thing with the sponge trick, put it in the sound hole, and then wrap the body in a garbage bag and put that in the case and leave it there for about a week or so. Check it. Well, if it's really, check it in like 2 days. See if the sponge is still um, dried out. If it's dried out, it needed humidification. It absorbed all that humidity. And then if that's the case, do it again and keep doing that until about at least 2 to 3 days. If the sponge is still damp, then you're probably good. Then you can do all your setup stuff to it, and you'll be fine. And that was standard practice. Checking that, yeah, that was standard practice for pretty much everything. Any new acoustic that would come in to the shop, and you do that, and then you could work on the guitars. Um, yeah, it was something new coming up north, and like, oh, the wintertime. Gotta make sure everything's is pretty good. But I just have humidifiers now in the in the in my room and stuff in the wintertime. It's like at the actual guitar shops, they have humidification chambers that they can stick the guitar in and all of that. Yeah. It's something I never really knew any of this stuff until I worked in a guitar shop, and then I learned a lot from how to, you know, make the nuts and refrets and all of that stuff, and learned how the guitar maintenance stuff was huge. And then you can just get now I can just get the tools that I need on StewMac or whatever, and make, you know, fix everything myself, which is great. Um, and even the electronic stuff. That's probably the easiest part of the guitar, and the less time consuming part is doing the electronics. The the rest of it takes so much time. You can wire a guitar in, you know, an hour, if if that. Acoustics are a little more difficult, but put it on here. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, I got another video too coming out. I had mentioned that we had talked about it a couple streams ago about doing a review on each guitar and just talking about it. And the first one I'm going to do, because you guys wanted it, was on the Rancher. Can you see it? Can you see it? Oh, one I just got the white Falcon. Oh, I guess not white Falcon. Whatever, is the white, yeah, white Falcon Rancher. And I don't play acoustic all that often, but it's been a great acoustic guitar just for playing around the house, at least anyway. And I've played it a few times live, and it's always been good. I just yeah, just don't really play it as much. Even though I do this duo act, um, I end up just using the jazz box or this and play through an acoustic amplifier with the electric guitar, and that works fine. You know, it's a little more subdued, a little more mellow, and it gets you more of that background, because those type of gigs, you're not really the center. You're not the center of attention. You're just musical wallpaper, basically. Um, and you're kind of just playing your, you know, instrumental tunes and maybe singing a little bit, and everything's very, very much in the back. Cool. Cool. All right. Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. Take care. Yeah. See you next week. I definitely keep rocking. You too. And yeah, we'll see you then. I'll have, as soon as I'll let you know. I'm sure you'll see when the new videos come out, hopefully next week. So take care. That's always fun. That's always a fun thing to play that mystery train riff. The original, of course. I've gotten so used to that version, I don't even play. Usually when I play, I'll start off the song like this. Then go. And it's easier for me to sing when I'm playing that than, for some reason. It's probably just what I'm used to. But anyway, all right, this was pretty good today. So yeah, I want to again thank everybody. I'm probably gonna, wrap things up here for the day. Um, Again, thank you guys for checking out the stream. Thank you guys for the videos, the likes, the shares, the subscribers. Um, we'll have some new content here very soon, and of course, working on the new album and all um, the new types of content for the channel, as well as try to come up with some other Patreon stuff and things for any future YouTube members as well. Like I said before, I'm not going to put a whole bunch of stuff behind any kind of paywall or anything like that, because I don't believe in that. But uh, I'll do a couple of little some things like that. But Yeah, for the most part, the subscriptions or the YouTube members or the Patreon thing is really just about you get merch and you get um, like one-on-one guitar lessons if you wanted something like that. So I do offer that in the or bass lessons if you want that in the either the Patreon or the YouTube membership. So we'd do something either directly over something like this or over Zoom or over whatever, and that would um, and I've done it a couple of times. It seems to work out pretty well and share tablature and that sort of stuff. Well, I'm glad it's bringing a smile to your face. Oh, you're very welcome. I enjoy doing it. I definitely enjoy making the videos, and I enjoy talking to you guys and having the live stream and uh, keeping the music going, building the channel. Give me a chance to just noodle around. It's always fun. I think if there was any other things I could just think of right off the bat to share with you as far as like a lesson goes. I'm thinking about taking some of these if they're concise enough, or even if I do jump cuts or whatever, I can take some of the things we talk about here and make little clips. Probably put that on a second channel instead of, because I don't want to. I'm afraid of clogging up this channel with a whole bunch of like little clips throughout the week. Although that might help build the channel even more. I don't know. Um, I don't know. For me, when I first started using YouTube, I didn't realize that you could, years ago, when I first got my first iPhone, I didn't realize that you could go onto, you have your video section for a channel, but then you have your, your shorts. Well, that was much more recent, but then your live stuff, that's where all this stuff is listed, doesn't show up in the actual video listing. And if you put videos, you would just see all of these different videos, random things. And so I try to be very careful with the playlists as well, because that's one thing that if I see another channel, if you have stuff categorized like this is gear stuff, this is lesson stuff, this is this or whatever, then it's easier to find where, because otherwise you're just searching through this list of videos. And but having these as little clips here might be something I might add to it. I guess it's fine as long as it comes through. I never actually have listened back to any of the streams, so I hope it sounds okay. My wife says it sounds good, so I trust her. Yeah, one thing I could say, rhythm wise, playing rhythm. Obviously, you can use your thumb. You can tuck the pick up, and just if you're trying to get acoustic sound, a little softer, with the thumb, as opposed to sometimes it's too much, because sometimes if you're really playing a lot of heavy chords, you start to sing, and then your instruments are drowning out your vocals. So you can always do the palm muting thing. But sometimes that adds a little too much, just delay and low string kind of pick sound, and you want more of that. So I would, recommend using the thumb. And then, of course, something I think about every once in a while, and I did yesterday, was just take the volume knob on the guitar, that's what it's there for, and just bring it down a little bit. And then, and that's another thing to get used to, is also the dynamic of your playing here when you're playing it, is just to get used to playing, really digging in. You're just backing your wrist off of the guitar just a little bit, so the pick is not digging in quite as much, right? just controlled with the dynamic of this and how heavy you're playing. The same thing with those little dynamics can really help. And that can also help with your lead playing as well, because some people you would play with a boost pedal, and I've never used one of those, or a distortion pedal or anything like that, because, well, distortion pedals in general for a Gretsch is very touchy, because you'll hit that, and all of a sudden you'll just get crazy feedback because it's a hollow body, right? So you have to be somewhat careful with how much you use a distortion pedal. But if you get the guitar set to a volume that sounds good with your leads, then you can control your rhythm with the dynamic, with either just playing lightly, thumb, palm muting, and then when you go to play lead, you can just, if you want to keep the leads quiet, you can control it dynamically. And you have plenty of headroom, then the drummer starts kicking in. You can, really kick it in there if you want. And that, then you don't have to worry about all this pedal nonsense. And some people like working with pedals. And if you're not singing, I would totally get into pedals. If I played with a band where I didn't sing and I just played guitar and backed people up, I would be all about having a bunch of different things that I would mess around with and make this song sound different and that song sound different. But when you're singing, you got enough to worry about with leads and chord melody and finger picking, and then singing on top of it, and harmonies and everything else. You want to make sure your rig is as simple as possible. So it's as simple as it gets. It's the chorus echo, which of course is amazing, but even if you use just a regular delay pedal, which is typically what I use, even though I have a pedal board, where is it? That's back there. And it just has tremolo, spring verb, and a delay pedal on it. I pretty much use the delay pedal for the bulk of what I do, like 90% of the material. And then occasionally I'll kick the spring verb on if I want, or turn the reverb on this thing if I have like a surf tune or something. And then a tremolo I use on maybe two or three songs. Occasionally I'll put it on for like a surf tune, something like that, which sounds good. There's no reverb on there now, but it can sound good on something like that. Or the tremolo can sound good on that. But then I just have that, and then I don't have to worry about all these pedals at my feet. It's just the cable, and I'm good. Yeah, and that's and that too. When you have those dynamics up and down, when you're playing and you're muting too. Then when you go to finger pick, because the one thing like this stuff, it tends to be quieter, especially when you're not using a thumb pick or this pick, right? You can hear the. I'm not used to that. I usually don't do it. The thumb mellows out the low end string, but if the guitar's too quiet, that goes away, and you basically just kind of turns to mud, and you don't even really hear it. But if the guitar's loud enough, again, and you learn that dynamic control, you can play it softer if you're singing a little bit. Right? And then when you go into a solo for something, it's like Mystery Train. Play that quieter, and then when I go into the solo, I can dig in just a little bit, just a tiny bit more, and then the guitar is just so much louder and over the top of everything. So again, you just work the dynamics of the guitar, and then you don't have to worry about that boost pedal nonsense. I suppose it does work for certain, other genres. I mean, I guess this is more of a niche thing. If you're playing classic rock, but I don't even think, Jimmy Page didn't have a boost pedal as far as I know. But I know a lot of bands now will play a lot of, if you're in a rock cover band or something, you'll they don't even use amplifiers anymore. A lot of the times they just plug this stuff into like an amp model or pedal and plug it into a PA system, and they just have a powered speaker behind them as their amplifier monitor, and that's it. And it works. I mean, it does sound good, but again, something you would, if you're not singing, a lot of those bands have a separate singer, so you have the time and you can focus on more, and it becomes a musical / technical job. So anyway, but whatever works for anybody. I'm just talking about what works for me in the roots genre area, and coming from a performing, singing, and playing standpoint, and not just playing the guitar. So cool. All right. Well, I think that'll pretty much do it for today. Can get on with the next video. Hopefully either later today, or if not, first thing beginning of the week. And we'll have that new content up there. I'm gonna just kind of play around here a little bit, and then we'll see you guys next week. I think we're good for next week. Let me just verify everything. I do apologize. I forgot to post for this stream this week until the last minute, and I realized today, it's like, oh, I forgot to do it. But I do appreciate everybody that is hanging out. Let's see. That was always one of my favorite riffs to play. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.